call the meeting back to order and continue with county advisory boards to manage wildlife duties, operations, regulation processes, and commission interactions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It looks like we've lost a few. Hopefully they'll come back, but again, really informal, and I'm going to rely on Gil to assist with some of this. We're going to kind of tag team this. I kind of wanted to talk about the basis of the whole CAB and commission process, and really, well, it's included in the North American model of wildlife conservation, and it's the public trust. 7 principles. Wildlife is held in the public trust. In order to hold something in the public trust, there has to be an opportunity for the public to express their opinions to that end. So I want to kind of go through the other points. Regulated. Hunting is regulated. We have regulated commerce in wildlife. Hunting and fishing laws are created, again, through a public process. Hunting and fishing are opportunities for all. Non-frivolous use of wildlife. The wildlife is an international resource, and that wildlife should be scientifically managed. So in at least 3 of those, it calls out specific need or desire for that public. Wildlife in the public trust, hunting and fishing laws created through public process, and opportunities for all. So 3 of the 7 principles of the North American model of wildlife conservation speak to the need, the desire to have a public process. So I'd like to build on that public trust resource a little bit more. Several key landmark Supreme Court rulings have made it clear the wildlife belong to no one, but are to be held in trust by government for the benefit of present and future generations. This public trust doctrine has become the legal bedrock for government to establish regulatory authority over wildlife. Federal agencies recognize that the states possess broad trustee and police powers over fish and wildlife within their borders, including fish and wildlife found on federal lands within the state. So even though we've got 85% federal lands, and in actuality it's difficult, if not impossible, to manage the animals that depend on those lands without having some authority or ability to affect change in the habitat. Even the federal land management agencies understand that the wildlife that exists within the state borders are managed held in public trust by government for the benefit of present and future generations. Through federally levied excise taxes on fishing and hunting equipment, states are able to leverage non-federal funds at a ratio of 3 to 1, 3 federal dollars for every 1 state dollar in the name of fish and wildlife management. And that distinction is not exclusive to game species or non-game species. Those dollars help the state agencies fulfill their statutory mission and to hold those resources in the public's trust. The Nevada Department of Wildlife statutory authorities and responsibilities are outlined, again, in the NRS 501 through 506 for wildlife and 488 for boating. So as we look at the public process, we have at least 3 sources. We can identify at least 3 sources of input here. The Department of Wildlife makes those general recommendations to the Wildlife Commission, governor-appointed Wildlife Commission. County advisory boards appointed by County Commission also provide that input to the Wildlife Commission, and the general public provides input to the Wildlife Commission. The Wildlife Commission, one of the outputs of that process are policies and regulations that are then implemented and enforced by the department. So the department, although on the front end in providing input, recommendations, is also on the back end in terms of being tasked with the enforcement and implementation of those policies and regulations. So when we look at the commission duties as outlined in NRS 501-181, it's to establish broad policies for wildlife management and boating safety, provide guidance to NDOW, to adopt regulations for wildlife management and boating safety, and adopt regulations specific to hunting, trapping, and fishing. And those regulations are in consideration of NDOW recommendations, county advisory board input, and public views at an open meeting. It really is just more words to describe this graphic right here. It's kind of the public process. And so, more specifically, we'll the intent here is to kind of dive into the county advisory board role and how that's described. So in NRS 501-260, it's the creation. I'm going to go through just a couple NRSs. This isn't all inclusive to all the NRSs that contain language dealing with the CAB authorities and duties, but some of the broader ones. There are some that talk about representation that I didn't include, but certainly if you're interested, you can jot some of these NRSs down, and they're all lumped pretty closely together in this chapter. But the creation, number of members, and officers. There's hereby created a county advisory board to manage wildlife in each of the several counties. In a county whose population is less than 700,000, each board consists of 3 or 5 members at the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. If that county has a population that is 700,000 or more, each board consists of 5 or 7 members at the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. A chair and vice chair must be selected by each board. Meetings. The board shall meet before each meeting of the commission and at such other times as the chair may call or the commission may request. So pretty broad. However, at a minimum, I would say that this NRS says that there shall be a meeting before each meeting of the commission, and then at such other times as the chair desires or the commission requests. The duties in 501-297, evaluating local opinion and advising the commission. The board shall solicit and evaluate local opinion and advise the commission on matters relating to the management of wildlife. And if we look, again, more specifically at the representation of the CAB members, you could probably take that a step further and say that that input, and I don't know that it's in statute, but would stand to reason that if there is a CAB member who represents a particular interest, that input back to the commission may be specific to that interest.
So Tony, just to back up a minute there, because I know I've had discussions with some of the other CAB members, is most months, if an NDOW staff person comes to our meeting, they're our public. Other than that, it's just the 5 of us sitting there talking about the issues and making decisions. One of the things we're charged with is soliciting and evaluating opinion. How do we go about soliciting, getting more people involved to come to the CAB meetings?
Well, I think there's a couple possible answers to that, and I think all the CAB members here would say that you probably have more interactions between meetings as far as opportunities to solicit public input. People in the community recognize your role in this process, and whether you're at the grocery store or a ball game, you have people in your ear, probably sometimes when you're at dinner with your spouse, people in your ear, giving you input, whether you solicit it or not. As far as the soliciting that input, it's a growing challenge, participation, and some people believe that lack of participation is a result of the commission not paying attention or adopting recommendations of the CABs, while others believe that lack of participation signifies people are content with the way things are. Maybe it's some of both. But you talk about the soliciting local opinion. You can advertise a meeting. It's an open meeting. you adhere to open meeting laws, you advertise, those meetings are posted. You can present that opportunity, and I guess I would argue that simply complying with an open meeting law and posting and advertising those is a solicitation for input, and that the lack of attendance or participation could be an indication. Certainly when we have those issues where people have strong opinions, we have a lot of people show up. And you could probably, talk about the quota meeting or the season setting meeting versus those other meetings. And you probably see a difference in your attendance. But I don't think that in this NRS, which says solicit, I don't know to what extent you could actually go to solicit that local opinion. I think by having a public meeting that adheres to the open meeting law, you are soliciting input.
Tony, a couple of times, we try to put ads in the paper. It's posted in 3 different public places in town, as the open meeting law requires. And as you said, a lot of times you come across people who have an interest in a certain topic. And particularly when it's quota setting or season setting, we have a lot more visitors than when it's just a normal meeting and we're going to be discussing things that will be on the agenda for the commission meeting. And some people look at it, well, we're going to set some regulations for fishing, and I'm not interested in fishing, so I'm not going to go. So I think that's to be expected. I mean, it's hard enough for a lot of the cabs, because when we do budget setting, and we have to chase some of the cabs to get their budgets submitted, it's because, well, I don't have enough people on my board to really come up with this. It's only me making these decisions. And that's a common complaint, trying to get people to serve on the board, because some of these issues can get contentious. I mean, over the last few years, we've had a lot of issues that took hours and hours and hours at commission meetings, and some of the counties had bigger issues than others regarding some of the regulations. And so, it varies by county, it varies by what the issues are, and when Tony put the slide up that said certain counties are going to have 3 to 5 members and some are going to have 5 to 7. Some counties can't get more than 1 or 2. And you want to have a cross-section. The NRS goes in to say that, you want people that are interested in hunting, fishing, trapping, and representing the general public. It's very hard to get that 4th one, that general public member. So a lot of times you've got a person who may have a hunting or fishing license, but he or she is representing the general public. And that's sometimes the best you can do. When you look at the duties, as Tony mentioned, we're the conduit to get what your county and the constituents in that county feel about certain issues. And we're supposed to carry those comments back to the commission meeting. And, we've been through evolutions, and everybody in this room who has been on county boards long enough know that we had makeups of the commission at one time. What do the cabs think? And they took those comments to heart. And then we've had commission over the generations that what they felt was more important than what the cabs were reporting. So we've gone through cycles. And it's nice to see, the things turning around where people really take into consideration those of us who are out in the field, supposedly gathering these inputs from the general public to bring to the commission to let them know what the public feels about these issues. Because all we are conduits to bring that information to the commission.
And I agree with you, Gil, that that's what I struggle with sometimes is when it's the five of us, I can pretty much tell you before the meeting even starts how everyone's gonna vote on something. If there's no public input, if it's just the five of us there. And so trying to be that conduit, representing the whole populace, we're really representing the views of the five guys that are on the board. Five guys, right?
But I think in that regard, you have to put faith in the fact that the county commissioners are appointing people to the cabs who they think can be an adequate voice for the county in this process. So there's a level of responsibility at the county commission level who they appoint to the cabs to make sure that this process is working as it should.
The other piece of that too that I look at a lot of times is on the action reports or the minutes. You know, who was in attendance? Were there a lot of people there? Is it just, you know, the CAB members? You know, that stuff's important, just as important to me as, you know, what you're reporting is, you know, how many people were there? Is this a contentious issue? Is it not really that huge of a deal? Were there a bunch of people? Were there not? You know, it's just, I like looking at that sort of stuff as well. But I agree with Commissioner Johnston. I mean, the county commission, I think part of the reason for that NRS being that way is they're entrusting their local citizens who they think can represent their county and their public in their county, even if it's those people in the meeting room.
I think that's also like part of the meeting, just like the commission reports on comments that people may send you emails or call you or run into you and stop you and say, I feel this way about these things, and you report that back. And the same way with some of, you know, our CAB meetings, some of the individual members will report contact with the public. They may have gotten an email or they were stopped at a store and people recognize, oh, I know you're so-and-so and so, and I feel this way about this particular issue, and that's carried back, you know, and that's the way it works. I mean, Carson County is, you know, you got 50,000 people, and how many people really are concerned about all these issues? You know, 2-3% maybe. And some of them are, you know, more vocal about certain issues because, hey, I'm a fisher, I'm an angler, and I want to know about this, and why did we change this, and why did you say, you know, certain times of the year we can't fish here because we're doing something that fish, and we're trying to introduce a new strain and blah, 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 and some people say, well, no, that's going to stop me from fishing. Well, you need to know about it. Not much we can do about it, but report it and, you know, explain to them why this is being done. And, you know, we had people in town who were against certain, you know, hunting of certain animals, bears and stuff like that, and we reported back. And, you know, some of those meetings where quite a few people showed up, and some meetings it's the five of us. You know, just that's the way it is.
So, to this point right here, I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm looking around the room, and we have 4 CAB members here now. In 17 counties, and maybe 2 members of the public. We provided video conferencing feed from Elko yesterday and staffed that and had no one show up, not a single person there all day. I can't remember Esmeralda County's ever had a cab. I know White Pine County, or as you referenced, struggling to get people, Lander County, Nye County. And I really don't know if all those challenges or indications have a consistent reason or if there are multiple reasons. Certainly when we have challenging issues, we get a lot of people in the room. They show up for that one issue and then they leave. We saw that yesterday. We saw the whole room empty out, and that speaks to both sides of the issue. And that's public process. I guess that's part of the reason we're here, is to take that input. That's what this board does, is takes that input I think this workshop is a good opportunity to educate and inform not only the CABs, but also interested public as to the whole process. I think it's unfortunate that we don't have more participation. I think it's unfortunate that we continue to find ourselves in the scenario where the extremes dictate the terms of the debate, and we spend 90% of our time talking about less than 10% of our issues, and we can't, we certainly don't have the broader audience for department activity report, agency overview, WAPWA, these broader issues that are about conservation. And I think it's maybe speaks to the challenge that we have today in elevating conservation as a societal core value. Instead, it's an issue-driven public process, but we're still obligated and required to provide this venue, and to that end we will. And I think that the public and the CABs commission are critical pieces to that public, fulfilling that public trust piece. So if you guys have ideas on increasing participation, if there are things that we can do as a department to make those public meetings more attractive to some of your constituents, let us know, and we'll do what we can, because we believe in that public process and want to facilitate it to the extent that we can.
One thing, Tony, we've seen, going back 15 years ago when I started, our meeting didn't start till 7 or 7:30 at night. It'd go on till 10 or 11. And then slowly over the last 15 years, it's kind of moved back earlier and earlier and earlier. But I think you can get to a point where it could be too early, because you eliminate some people who are working and want to come after work. I mean, I'm not trying to set a fix. Everybody should meet at 6:30 or 7 or 4:30. But I think that could be something that would keep some people away who might want to attend, or make it more convenient for people to attend. I mean, I think it's one of the things the individual CABs have to deal with in what's, if they try it for a couple of meeting sessions and see if it did bring some more interested people in by changing the time or something like that to find out, because, I think, some of the counties have a lot more participation because of the time they meet or the location where they meet. To pick up, especially when you're down in Clark County, you've got a tremendous population to draw from. But when we see the video conferencing from Las Vegas, I see the same faces that are on the videos who come to those meetings when we're having a meeting in some other locale, and the ones who would come to the video site, and that's good. I mean, it means something to these people, and it's important to them.
I think that counties certainly have that flexibility. I don't know about county rules and regulations, but I think they might even see more participation in those counties where they serve alcohol. NRS 501-303 further describing duties: submission of recommendations, attendance of chair or other members at the commission meetings. Number 1, the board shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and setting seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping, which must be considered by the commission in its deliberation on an establishment of regulations. 2, the chair or vice chair or members of the board appointed by them, A, shall attend the meetings of the commission, and B, are entitled to receive such travel and per diem expenses as are allowed by law. So perhaps because we're not talking about season setting, I don't know. I'd have to spend some time looking at this, and I don't know if that shall. I don't know that the state or the commission has ever reached out to particular counties and expressed to see an increased participation by the county advisory boards. But
They have.
And those letters oftentimes went to the county commission asking for, sometimes it went to the county, to the CAP chair, but there were times where letters were sent to the respective county commissions saying, we need participation with your board, and if we can't, if the board that you have isn't gonna participate, then you need to turn it over. And that's really what it boiled down to. And to be honest with you, this is about the level that drew that attention, and there's probably time to consider that as a commission again, just to say, hey, we know White Pine's having a hard time getting people, so find people that are interested. Reach outside the circle of what you normally draw from, and get some people here. They used to come every meeting. They were a mainstay for years. We haven't seen anybody, we haven't seen regular participation there forever. Story is real good about coming and talking about the seasons. They've always provided their input on the season setting stuff, but outside of that, they're 20-minute drive from here, 30 minutes at the most, worst case from here, and we never seen it.
And unfortunately, the individuals or the counties that would potentially benefit most from hearing this aren't here.
No, that's exactly why the letter.
Yeah, that's what the letters were.
Tony, I'd like to mention that one thing, now this is a county advisory workshop. And yet, by law, each county can only send one representative if they're traveling. So, and that makes it hard. I mean, Tom can come down and represent Humboldt. But if his whole entourage wanted to come, it would all be out of pocket. Because by NRS, they're only allowed one person to travel. So that's kind of a conflict too. I mean, especially where it's a workshop for the county advisory boards.
That's a good point. Because speaking on behalf of White Pine, I've been there for a little less than a year. Final 2-3 board members in that time. There's what consistent beef that I hear from the guys that quit are the ones that actually quit. There's been retirements too. Is the burden of making the meetings, cost of the meeting, and then just having one individual be able to attend like a workshop. If we were to bring 3 or 4, it would be out of pocket even more. And the other thing too is the amount of material that we're having to pour over in written form is pretty daunting. It's pretty amazing. I was a fleet superintendent for Washington County, and it impresses me pretty well. It's pretty hard to gather it all in. So what you have is you have guys that are not used to that kind of material that they have to look over, and including that if you're just a Joe Blow hunter, you're not an outfitter, you're not a sport, a guy that's lives and breathes for it. It's hard to get interested in, say, what's going on with the Truckee River versus what's going on in Bassett Lake. It's I don't know how you would address it, but that some of the issues and the biggest issue, which is one that I've argued with just recently, is this board here, as far as I can tell, is interested in what the Cavs have to say and lean on what the Cavs have to say. From what I've heard, previous boards have actually made it really difficult for a Cav member to feel like he's a part of the process. And that's a general, that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of White Pine people here, because the old CAT board guys are telling everybody, oh, you're just wasting your time. And I've been watching as a new CAT board and watching how this board, the commission handles all that. I'm pretty impressed, to be honest with you. I'm actually very impressed. But that has to be, I think, worked and woven into the each county structure. so that people will start trusting the board and the commission.
I
Well,
think we've, in the past, this meeting, we've changed that rule where you could bring your whole board for the county workshops.
So,
We've had that in past years. I don't know how long ago we quit doing that.
the one that we did in Humboldt County, Winnemucca, it's been a lot of years ago now.
Yeah.
We talked about elk, you know, what constitutes a prize elk, you know, this is when Eric Olson was on. And, God, how many people were at that one? Tom?
I was there.
I mean, there had to be 30 people there.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and maybe it's the centralization of the meeting a little bit, I don't know. Makes it, you know, if people were attending on their own, which I think there was some compensation for that, but even if they weren't, maybe having that more centralized made it a little easier to tolerate, you know, the expense out of pocket, if that was, is what it was. But, you know, we could take this around and do this a couple times a year, in a couple different spots. I don't know, I'm thinking a little bit outside.
If you did it as a workshop, not as an actual meeting, but more of a town hall or a workshop.
right.
You
more
could
inclusive.
go to several locations throughout which state at different times of year to give the same presentation. And as far as travel, when I was on the board, there was a number of meetings I went to representing our board, but I had other board members that came. And they were compensated because I know the state would give me 55 or 56 cents a mile, which I was entitled to, but to me was a ripoff to try and go and do the right thing for the public. So in return, I would compensate my people the extra money to pay for their rooms or help offset their meals. And that's something you could do even in White Pine, especially for White Pine. You've got like $700 coming in. You can fund a lot of guys travel for that, especially if you put several of you in one vehicle. So that's just an idea.
Bring it up.
Yeah, because there's been times where guys have written together, and you know, most of the rooms have double beds, you know, 2 beds, and it doesn't cost any more to the guys to stay in the room, and, you know, there's ways to skin this cat, you know, because of the limitations on what the budgeting process permits, but when you get down to the actual cost of it, I mean, we want the participation, and I think, you know, that if there needs to be some exceptions or some changes in the way it's, the funding is allocated, particularly like you said for a workshop, maybe it's something we need to consider in order to attract more people, if that makes it more, you know, productive to have more input.
There are a number of counties, though, that submit their action reports routinely prior to the commission meetings who don't necessarily attend. You know, Eureka, I can't remember the last time, I haven't seen an action report from them prior to the commission meeting, even if they don't attend. I think, too, you can't forget the fact that a lot of people feel very uncomfortable speaking in an environment like this, especially when some of the issues are as they are, contentious and public speaking. And some people who are willing to serve on the county advisory board and seek input and do that and provide recommendations in writing, they don't necessarily then want to stand up in the room and speak publicly. That you can't discount that. That is a fear that a lot of people have. And, you know, I'd love to see more people participate, but when you look at voter participation at less than 50% in a general election, you know, what are the expectations then in committing to a public process where people won't go sometime during Tuesday, once every couple of years for, you know, 15 minutes to cast some ballot, and people won't do that. You know, I think we may be setting expectations a little bit high on public participation overall in meeting, 2-day meetings like this.
Oh, it's a beautiful sunny Saturday afternoon.
The one thing I run into in Humboldt County, I've got a great board. They're diverse, they're pretty diversified. I think it's a perfect board. The problem I have is I've got volunteers, other than me, young ones that have kids,
And the volunteer that volunteers for this is volunteering for 2 or 3 other, 4 other things at the same time. And when it comes to the meetings, they go, who's going this week, this month? Well, I've got baseball camp, I've got to coach football. We just got a million things going with the younger generation, and it gets hard for them to fit these things in. And I'm the old guy that has nothing but work, so.
Anything to get out of work.
Exactly, so I applaud you on that.
Just in preparation for this today, I put some bullet points down, you know, having just served as chair for 2 years, and really valuing the county process of things that, in my mind, would help improve the process. So I'm just gonna go through them because it seems appropriate now. So one is actually a charge to my fellow commissioners who sit up here to actually go to the county advisory board meetings. I've set kind of an internal goal to try and get to every single county advisory board at least once in my 6 years. Next year will be my 6th year. I think I'm at 10 or 11. So for those of you who can think of one that may be in the room that I haven't got to yet, it really helps me prepare for the meetings, because every time I go to a meeting, someone brings up something that I would have never in a million years thought about. And it just kind of helps prepare me. So, you know, even if you're in, you know, Clark County or Lyon County, it helps to go to some of the other counties too, just to get those different perspectives. And I think the members really enjoy having folks there and being able to provide that back and forth. But to that extent, one of the things that I would say to, you know, the chairs of the county advisory boards and the members is, don't be afraid to pick up the phone or send an email. You know, if you see something in your agenda that doesn't make sense, or, you know, hey, there's an item here and it has no support material, that's the reason all our information is posted online, whether it's an email or a phone call. So if we can't make a meeting, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and, hey, what's the story with this, or what got discussed at last meeting, I wasn't able to make it, or, I mean, that sort of interaction, it helps both the folks up here, and I think would help you prior to the meetings or even after the meeting if a question comes up. I know my lines of communication are always open. I try and get back. I know it's busy, but I try and get back to those as quick as I can. So I really encourage everyone to use all lines of communications. You know, I really appreciate the county advisory boards that consistently show up to these meetings. It's really easy to write down on paper, you know, what the recommendations are and send them in, and then kind of play the bluebird game if something doesn't get incorporated or whatever. But it really is a dynamic process, and having folks here that we can ask questions to if something didn't come through on the report sheet or the minutes, it's a tremendous help. And last session we had a bill that expanded some of the county advisory board duties and, you know, made it a requirement for any time we disagree with the county on the season or quota to write a letter. I was dead set against that. And the reason I was dead set against that letter thing is I did not want to make this a letter writing campaign where you guys send us an action report and we reply in a letter. That's, in my opinion, just not a good way to do business. So for those of you that are here and have stuck it out, thank you. Encourage your members, you know, rotate if they're available to come. For those of you in counties that have joined some that maybe aren't here, encourage their participation. I think there might be an opportunity for us, you know, to write a letter and encourage that as well. But, you know, those are kind of my biggest, I guess my biggest messages. And then the other thing is, you know, we video every one of these meetings. All the support material and presentations that go through here end up getting posted. So use the website. The video is nice. If you don't want to sit through the whole meeting on a sunny Saturday and you have questions, just go to that chunk of video and watch whatever item you're locked in on. Maybe that's something you can take back to your members. I get a lot of those questions about, hey, what happened at the last meeting? I was really interested in X item but wasn't able to make it. Go look at that video. You know, instead of sitting here for 8 hours, you can sit on your computer for 20 minutes and at least get caught up, even the minutes. So those are just a couple of my thoughts, I guess, after 2 years as chair.
Good thoughts. So Commissioner Drew alluded to it, somebody else spoke to part of the reason, possible reason why there was poor participation was the commission has historically not listened. So last session, Assembly Bill 78 amended NRS 501-181 was Section 4, subsection A was amended to now read, if in establishing any regulations pursuant to this subsection, the commission rejects the recommendations of a county advisory board to manage wildlife with regard to the length of seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping, or the bag or possession limits applicable within the respective county, the commission shall provide to the county advisory board to manage wildlife at the meeting an explanation of the commission's decision to reject the recommendation, and as soon as practicable after the meeting, a written explanation of the commission's decision to reject the recommendation. So the way that past Chairman Drew and I determined to best accomplish this was that we would capture the discussion. Each commissioner discusses their feelings and how they're going to vote on those issues. We capture that in the meeting minutes and transcribe that, make reference to the video and the minutes, and provide a letter to the county for whose recommendation was different than the commission's direction. Typically, we wait until those meeting minutes are approved at the subsequent meeting to make sure that those are official minutes and we're not jumping the gun and misquoting somebody on those issues. So we give the commissioner the opportunity to read what he or she says in those minutes before sending that letter to the county and referencing those minutes. So this is something, especially for those of you who hear from your past members that the commission is not going to listen. At a minimum, the commission is now required to provide that justification verbally at the meeting and in writing as soon as practical after the meeting. Questions on that? So that just kind of is a broad picture of the duties and responsibilities. And at this point, I'd like to have Gil kind of put together a little bit of an outline to talk about some more specifics. Hopefully he can speak to the budget development process for the cabs, the reimbursement, and a few other more specific issues. And then after he's done, I'll run through the regulation process.
Thank you, Tom. For the record, Giuliana Carson Advisory Board. I'm looking around the room and I see people that taught me all about this. And so I learned it the hard way and by doing it, by coming to the meetings. And it was an interesting process because one of the very first things that I took on was I had just moved to Nevada, and my hunting partner for the last 20 years was in California. And I said, gee, we ought to hunt together here. It's great game, there's blah, 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 blah. And I realized that if we both put in, there was no guarantee that we'd get drawn for the same hunt. And I said, how do you avoid that? And I said, there's party hunting, but not between in-state and out-of-state people. So, I guess my first meeting was in Las Vegas, and I didn't know anybody. And I'm, trying to meet people who were sitting where all the commissioners sat, and I introduced myself. They didn't bite my head off, so I guess it was safe to talk to them some more. And I kind of wanted to know, was I reinventing the wheel, or had somebody tried this before? So I talked to some people on the commission who had been there for a number of years. Oh yeah, we had somebody bring this up a while, but it never got off the ground or something. I said, well, maybe it was the way it was presented. So, I went online and I saw this petition process, and I kind of fumbled my way through it, and I figured, well, I need the support of cabs, I need the support of the commission, so I better attend some of these meetings and get friendly with these people so I can explain to them why this is a good thing. And, as I discussed it with other cab members, they said, well, yeah, I got some friends and that would be a good idea. I think I'd like that. And I talked to some of the commissioners, and some were cool on the idea, so some thought, well, how many people are we really gonna get to do this? And what's it gonna cost program-wise to allow the system to accept that? So then I had to talk to SCI and find out, is this a complicated thing that we want to do? And then I talked to some people, are you in favor of this? And, you know, and then pretty much I brought it up in one of the commission meetings and we said, well, let's send it out to all the rest of the cabs and see what they think. And, you know, because I had talked to people ahead of time, it didn't come out of left field. They understood why I was doing this. Maybe it was a selfish interest, but some of them said, well, you know, I got a cousin who lives blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it'd be nice to have them come and hunt with us. So, to make a long story short, it got passed. And each year I follow how many of those, how much do we make selling out-of-state party hunts? And it keeps growing, little by little every year. So it turned out to be a good thing. But here's it talking from as a guy who was just brand new, you know, to get some